course of 10 weeks, 20 Chicago area high school teens practiced for 4 days a week in preparation of this controversial case. These are video excerpts of their hard work, including witness and expert testimonies, objections, entering evidence, and opening and closing statements. And go.
Prosecution would like to call Rachel Gentile to the stand. Please state your full name.
Rachel Gentile.
How old are you? Prosecution would like to call Sean Nofsky to the stand. Please state your full name.
Sean Nofsky.
What is your current occupation?
911 dispatch.
How did you become involved in this case?
I'm the one who took George Zimmerman's call tonight.
Prosecution would like to call Dr. Valerie Rao to the stand. In your expert opinion, were Mr. Zimmerman's injuries consistent with those caused by contact with concrete?
No, they were not. They were by concrete. He would have either been unconscious, needed stitches, or surgery. The defense calls to the stand Oliver Bertoloni. Can you please state your name?
Oliver Bertoloni?
Do you know George Zimmerman?
Yes.
What is your relationship with the defendant, George Zimmerman?
I am his mother.
Are you aware of why we're here today?
Yes.
Did you hear the recording of describe your relationship with Mr. Zimmerman?
He's my co-worker. He's a good friend.
On a spectrum, could you describe the range of tones in which you have heard Mr. Zimmerman's voice?
Can you repeat that?
Good morning, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Mario Sanchez and my co-attorney is Malik Baker. We are representing the state of Florida in their case against George Zimmerman. May it please the court. February 26, 2012. A day that will live in the minds of people across the country. A day that a loving mother and father lost a young son to violence. A day in which justice had to be served for Trayvon Martin. February 26, 2012. The day that a man by the name of George Zimmerman acted selfishly upon a situation in which all in all could have been avoided. He thought of nobody's well-being other than his own when he pulled out his sidearm and shot Trayvon Martin directly in the chest. He acted upon his own discretion, and as a result, I am standing in front of you all this morning. Trayvon Martin was stalked and brutally killed by George Zimmerman the night of February 26, 2012. Trayvon Martin was unarmed and was not committing a crime. He was simply walking back to his temporary residence while speaking to a friend on a cellular phone. Due to Mr. Zimmerman's reckless reactions and behaviors, a teenage boy was murdered. To prove the state's case, we will be calling upon 8 witnesses. Today, the first witness will be Rachel Gentile, a friend of Trayvon Martin, and the girl that was on the phone with Trayvon Martin the night of February 26, 2012, prior to Trayvon Martin's death. She will testify that Martin was heading to his temporary residence and had no intention of committing a crime. And she will testify how Trayvon Martin felt from her personal knowledge and what he did after he realized that he was being followed by Mr. Zimmerman. The second witness we will call upon is a non-emergency dispatcher, Mr. Sean Nafke. He will testify that he gave orderly instructions to Mr. Zimmerman not to follow Trayvon Martin, but Mr. Zimmerman ignored his request and continued to follow Trayvon Martin. The third witness we will call upon is Detective Christopher Serino. Mr. Serino was the detective who interrogated George Zimmerman. He will testify that Mr. Zimmerman stated that he feared Trayvon Martin, but he followed Trayvon Martin, which couldn't be feared. He will testify that Mr. Zimmerman reported that he got out of his car to follow Trayvon Martin, but in the phone call recorded with Mr. Sean Nafke, he got out to get an address. The fourth witness we will call upon will be Ms. Sabrina Fulton. She will testify that the voice crying for help in the 911 recording is indeed her son, Trayvon Martin. The fifth witness we will call upon is Dr. Shiping Bao. Dr. Bao will testify that Trayvon Martin had no chance of surviving the gunshot wound. He will also testify that Trayvon Martin did not move after he was shot, and if he did, it was very minimal amount of movement, contradicting Mr. Zimmerman, who stated that Trayvon Martin sat up and said, "You got me, you got me." When in reality, he was suffering from the gunshot wound and was unable to move, so there was no way possible he could have sat up straight and spoken. The sixth witness we will call upon will be Ms. Patricia Terrell, the neighbor in which heard all the commotion. She will testify that she heard a whining sound, a whine that sounded like that of a young person. Seconds after she heard a gunshot, seconds after she heard a gunshot.
Objection.
What's the objection?
Your Honor, counsel is arguing this case.
The objection is overruled. Gentlemen of the jury, these are opening statements. The defense is going to have an opportunity to give opening statements as well. This is merely a recitation of what each side believes the evidence is going to show. You should independently, though, evaluate the evidence and the testimony of the witnesses as it comes in. Objection is overruled. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. She will testify that the whine stopped after the gunshot rang out. The seventh witness we will call upon is Cedric Turner. Mr. Turner is a cousin of Trayvon Martin. He will testify that the cry for help was indeed that of Trayvon Martin. They were really close in Miami, he stated, and that he would know how his cousin sounded like. He automatically recognized Trayvon Martin's voice in the 911 recording. Our eighth and final witness will be Dr. Valerie Rail. Dr. Rail will testify that Mr. Zimmerman's injuries are inconsistent with what he described happened on that of February 26, 2012. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we hope that after you have heard all the evidence, you will find that the state has met its burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant George Zimmerman, without legal justification, knowingly or intentionally, illegally murdered 17-year-old Trayvon Martin in the Sanford, Florida community on February 26, 2012. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chance Mitchell. I will be on the defense for George Zimmerman. We gather here today to determine the fate of one man. One person's life has already been tragically lost under the circumstances of the Stand Your Ground law. Now, another man is on the literal, federal, and social guillotine. Today, we look at the evidence, hear the testimonies, and absorb the empathy from two parties: my client, Mr. Zimmerman, and opposing side of Trayvon Martin. This case has torn asunder the American judicial system, and now we attempt to make sense of the disillusioned truth that is here before us. The very foundation of this case has already shaken the earth and made the heavens shudder and made the hells tremble before the case's might. This verdict will impact the lives of many. Despite this, we mustn't let our emotions cloud our judgment. This case is our chance to prove that the third branch of our government isn't a rotted or decaying branch. We have the power invested in us to achieve something great. Mr. Zimmerman was simply protecting his home, and protecting his neighbors, and protecting his friends. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Can you please state your name? And what is your relationship to Trayvon Martin?
I'm his mom. He's my son.
And were you and Trayvon close?
Yes.
And were you always there for Trayvon?
Yep, whenever he needed.
And I know that this must be emotional for you, but can you tell us what you know that led to the shooting on February 26, 2012?
He was out of town visiting his father, and his stepbrother said he was on the way to the store, and he said he tried to call him, but he didn't pick up, and George Zimmerman had shot Trayvon.
Okay, this guy, you want to go to the Senate?
You know, since he was the first person to interview him, his mind is scattered, so therefore he doesn't really have time to make up any claims or anything like that. So he would know firsthand if we had any malicious intent.
And given the fact he's a 10-year investigator and interviewed the defendant 3 times, I'm going to overrule the objection. Moving forward.
Can you please state your full name?
Valerie,
And what is your current occupation?
Chief Medical Examiner for the 4th District.
Chief Medical Examiner. And how do you know the people involved in this case?
I examined George Zimmerman.
Okay. And do you know what happened on February 26, 2012?
Yes.
And can you explain from your knowledge?
George Zimmerman shot Trayvon Martin.
And you stated that you treated Mr. Zimmerman for minor injuries, correct?
Correct.
Can you explain those injuries?
Small scratches, cuts on the back of his head.
Then I would like to enter evidence. Exhibit C.
Okay. Show to the other side. Any objection? All right.
Okay, in this picture, what does this picture look like to you?
Like a cut on the back of his head with it was bleeding, but it looked like the blood became dry.
Okay, so nothing but like a small cut, correct?
Yes.
All right. In your expert opinion, were Mrs. Zimmerman's injuries consistent with those caused by contact with concrete?
No.
They say you treated Mrs. Zimmerman for cuts and scrapes on the back of his head, right?
Correct.
So you're saying that there were no other wounds?
No. Not that I'm supposed to.
Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to bring up a piece of evidence. Exhibit scratches side of the head, back of the ear, face, pictures, and the pictures aren't shown back of the head. Some scars, the scratches on his face. And closer, look at his eyes.
Are you aware of the events that happened on February 26, 2012?
Yes.
Have you heard the 911 tape that was recorded on February 26, 2012 with the person screaming in the background?
Yes.
Who do you believe that person to be screaming in the background?
My son.
How sure are you?
Very sure.
Can you describe the range of tones that you have heard Mr. Zimmerman in? Like, have you heard him crying, screaming, or laughing?
Yes.
You aren't really close with your son at the moment, are you? You aren't really close with your son at the moment. Is that correct? So it has been a while since you actually talked to your son, correct?
Yes.
Have you heard your son scream before?
Yes.
But not recently, correct? Since you don't have a close relationship. So for all we know, your son's voice could have changed since you last heard him scream, correct?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Good morning, ladies, gentlemen, and members of the jury. We are all gathered here today to get an answer on why an innocent 17-year-old boy by the name of Trayvon Martin was shot by Mr. George Zimmerman. You have heard both sides of what was said to happen on February 26, 2012. You may have questions that will never answer or confuse you. We all would like to know why Mr. Zimmerman got out of his vehicle when dispatcher Sean Knockey suggested he shouldn't, considering how Mr. Zimmerman felt like his life was being threatened. You may also wonder why Trayvon was allegedly up to no good, according to Mr. Zimmerman. And most importantly, why was Trayvon shot to death? Mr. Zimmerman stated that his head was being banged up against concrete, which Chief Medical Examiner Rao said she doesn't have proof of that based on her observations. Who would you believe, a Chief Medical Examiner or a man who gave 2 different statements? Sabrina Fulton lost her son to a man who assumed Trayvon was up to no good. Miss Fulton can look into her son's eyes every morning, night, or whenever to tell him, I love you. At the end of the day, several things will remain a mystery. For example, who was actually screaming help in the background of the audio tape? Or Trayvon might have decided the story. George Zimmerman had the opportunity to stand his ground, why couldn't Trayvon have the same chance?
Why did you pursue him? This was the question that rang out across America once this case received national attention. We all saw the pictures of the small boy and of George Zimmerman. Our hearts grieved for the small boy and felt animosity towards this monster named George Zimmerman. The public wasn't informed that the pictures that were on our TV screen were of 12-year-old Trayvon. We weren't told that George Zimmerman was part Hispanic. We were told that this case was about race and how Martin Luther King's I Had a Dream speech never reached Stanford, Florida. Well, today, you heard the story, minus the public bias, plus the truth. You heard Gladys Zimmerman, Zimmerman's mother, the person who knows Zimmerman's characteristics and his voice better than anyone on the planet, state, without a shadow of doubt, that the person screaming in anguish on that 911 tape recorded on February 26, 2012, was her son, her little boy. Jerry Russo, his former worker and current friend, knew without a doubt that the person screaming for help in that tape was George. You also heard the testimony of Oliver Berthelon, his horrendous experience, and how George Zimmerman comforted him. George Zimmerman started a neighborhood watch to prevent despairing cases like Oliver Berthelon, who, in order to protect his infant son, was forced to hide in his son's closet during the robbery, which caused him to move away from Twin Lakes. You also heard the testimony of Antoine Johnson, a psychologist with 13 years of experience and expertise, say that in imminent danger, the body goes into fight or flight mode. George Zimmerman was in imminent danger. He feared for his life. In reaching a verdict, don't rely on the biased opinions of the press. Rely on the facts and the evidence that you heard today, because now you know the entire story, plus the truth minus the public bias. Thank you.
I was here with the shirt, he was walking the hood, and then that happened. When it rained, so it rained. You don't put your hood on. Just get wet. I mean, there have been allegations of break-ins in the neighborhood. That would have been like, that would have been like a that was a good setting to break.
He could have just followed him instead of just fighting.
So you tell me George Zimmerman didn't have no reason
he started. He could have followed him if he didn't want to fight. Because he said he didn't want nobody to break in the house. He could have followed him. But what was the point of him going back?
His hand was at his booty.
Your reason is incorrect.
He walked in the gated community. He walked in the gated community.
Well, he lived there.
He didn't live there.
He was living there for the time. Okay.
For the time. But he didn't. By how?
Has the jury concluded their deliberations? Have you reached a verdict? Can you hand me the verdict? Will you please read the verdict to the audience?
Yes. We, the jury, find George Zimmerman guilty.
Zimmerman found guilty. We will conclude these proceedings and schedule time for sentencing. Thank you very much to both sides of attorneys and all the witnesses and the audience. And that concludes our proceedings today. Thank you to the jury as well.
Thank you. Thank you for watching this video. If you work in any area of the legal field and would like to volunteer your expertise to a group of teens in the mock trial program, please email Michelle Newell at mnewell@greenlighttasuccess.org.